Do you remember the faces from The Chosen? This wasn't just a series, it became a movement. But behind the iconic scenes lies another story. What happened to the actors themselves? As of 2025, the actors who gave us unforgettable portrayals of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Peter, and Matthew, are living very different lives. Some are thriving, others are wrestling with personal challenges, and a few carry invisible scars from stepping into roles too big for ordinary people. So today, we go beyond the screen to uncover the hidden cost, the private battles, and the surprising transformations of the Chosen cast. Stay with me, because the final story will leave you speechless. Jonathan Roumie. When Jonathan Roumie was cast as Jesus, he wasn't just stepping into a role, he was stepping into an identity that would follow him long after the cameras stopped rolling. For most actors, a part is something you play and then leave behind. For Jonathan, it became something he could never escape. Before The Chosen, his career was fragile. He had done voice work, commercials, and bit roles, but nothing that gave him stability. At one point, he admitted he was so broke that he prayed desperately for help. The very next day, he received the call about The Chosen. Many fans now see that as providential, but it also meant his life would never be private again. Playing Jesus made Roumie a global figure almost overnight. Fans lined up for hours just to meet him, some even weeping at his presence. He has told stories of strangers asking him to bless their children or confessing sins to him as if he were a priest. It's touching, but also overwhelming. The danger of being the man who plays Jesus is that people confuse the role with reality. Roumie himself has admitted that this pressure weighs on him. He has to remind fans and himself that he's just an actor, not the savior he portrays. With fame came scrutiny. Some critics accuse him of leaning too far into religious celebrity, while others in Hollywood quietly see him as too faith-based for mainstream roles. Much like Jim Caviezel after The Passion of the Christ, Roumie walks a fine line, beloved by Christian audiences, but boxed in by the industry, off-screen. He has also spoken openly about his personal struggles, moments of loneliness, battles with pride, and the constant need to ground himself in prayer. "If I'm not praying, I'm lost," he confessed in a 2024 interview. Now, in 2025, Jonathan Roumie is busier than ever. He continues to film new seasons of The Chosen while also traveling worldwide for speaking engagements. He has addressed tens of thousands at faith rallies, visited the Vatican, and become a voice for young people searching for meaning in an anxious world. But this hasn't come without cost. Time away from family and friends, intense expectations, and the weight of representing Christ in the public square have left him visibly weary at times. Those close to him say he carries the role with both reverence and exhaustion. When asked if he regrets taking on the role, Roumie gives a quiet but firm answer. This was never just about acting, it's a mission. He sees himself as a bridge between the story of Christ and a modern world desperate for hope. And yet, as much as he inspires millions, Jonathan Roumie is still a man learning how to carry a burden bigger than himself. Perhaps that's what makes his story resonate, because it mirrors what faith really is, a gift, but also a cross. Shahar Isaac. Among the disciples in The Chosen, Simon Peter stands out as raw, emotional, and unforgettable. He is fiery, stubborn, fiercely loyal, and painfully human. Fans often say, "Peter feels like us." But behind Peter's face is Shahar Isaac, a man very different from the stormy fisherman he portrays. Unlike Jonathan Roumie, who embraced public speaking, Shahar Isaac has chosen silence. He rarely gives interviews, seldom attends large fan events, and keeps his personal life hidden. In an era where actors flood social media with curated images, Shahar posts sparingly, preferring photography and art over self-promotion. For Shahar, The Chosen was both a blessing and a disruption. Before the show, he had trained in theater, appeared in small roles, and quietly built a career. He wasn't a household name. Then suddenly, his face as Simon Peter was known in over 100 countries, from Brazil to South Korea. But fame doesn't always feel like success. Shahar has hinted in rare comments that the sudden recognition has been overwhelming. He didn't set out to be the face of Peter for millions of Christians. And yet, that's exactly what happened. As of 2025, Shahar continues to play Peter in the ongoing seasons of The Chosen. But outside of the series, his career remains surprisingly quiet. While some co-stars embrace new projects, Shahar has kept a low profile, taking selective theater work and keeping Hollywood at a distance. Industry insiders say his privacy makes him harder to cast in mainstream productions. Directors often want actors who will promote projects, attend events, and keep a public profile alive. Shahar's refusal to play that game has slowed his career outside The Chosen. Fans who meet him at rare conventions describe him as polite, thoughtful, and reserved. But when the cameras roll, he becomes Peter, bold, reckless, alive. It's almost as if Shahar saves his fire for the screen and protects his private self from the consuming flames of fame. In many ways, his life echoes Peter's story, the tension between courage and fear, faith and doubt, public passion and private struggle. And maybe that's why his performance resonates so deeply, because Shahar Isaac, like Simon Peter, seems to be searching for balance in a world that won't leave him alone. Elizabeth Tabish. When audiences first saw Elizabeth Tabish as Mary Magdalene, broken, haunted, and tormented by demons, many said her performance felt too real. The pain in her eyes, the trembling in her voice, the quiet relief when Jesus called her by name. It was as if she wasn't acting at all. And in a sense, she wasn't. Before The Chosen, Elizabeth's life looked much like Mary's at the start of the series, lost in shadows. She had spent years pursuing acting, only to face rejection after rejection. Roles dried up, bills piled up, and depression pressed down harder each year. In interviews, she admitted she was ready to quit acting altogether. She felt invisible, unwanted, and drained by the constant disappointments of Hollywood. Then came the audition for The Chosen. "I didn't think I'd get it," she later said. But the role of Mary Magdalene was hers, and it would become her lifeline. Elizabeth has said that playing Mary forced her to face her own struggles with self-worth. Scenes of Mary collapsing in despair, doubting her value, and questioning whether she was really loved. Those weren't just lines on a page. They were her reality. Fans were moved to tears by her performance, and many wrote to her saying, "You saved my life. You showed me that God sees me too." But what the audience didn't always realize is that the role was saving Elizabeth as well. The success of The Chosen brought Elizabeth sudden recognition. Fans approached her at airports, crying as they hugged her. Churches invited her to speak. She became a symbol of redemption for many who struggled with depression and trauma. But fame didn't erase her battles. Elizabeth has continued to be candid about her mental health journey. "I still fight the darkness," she admitted in 2023. But Mary's story reminds me I'm not defined by it. Now, in 2025, Elizabeth balances acting with advocacy. She uses her platform to raise awareness about mental health, encouraging honesty about struggles that many hide. Off-screen, she remains deeply artistic, painting, writing, and directing small projects in addition to her work on The Chosen. She has also become a quiet voice for women in Hollywood who feel discarded, reminding them that purpose often comes when you least expect it. What makes Elizabeth's journey so powerful is how closely it mirrors Mary Magdalene's. A woman once crushed by despair, now lifted by grace. In her own words, "I thought my career was over. I thought my life was stuck in darkness, but God gave me Mary, and through her, He gave me hope again." For fans, Elizabeth Tabish will always be Mary Magdalene. For Elizabeth herself, Mary will always be the role that saved her life. Patel. When The Chosen introduced Matthew, audiences were surprised. He wasn't the traditional image of a disciple. He was awkward, meticulous, socially anxious, and painfully different from the others. Yet over time, Matthew became one of the most beloved characters in the series. The man behind that performance is Patel. And just like Matthew, his own story has been one of searching for belonging in a world that often felt closed to him. As a South Asian actor, Patel faced a wall of stereotypes in Hollywood. For years, the only roles offered to him were background characters, tech support workers, or comedic sidekicks. He dreamed of meaningful storytelling, but the industry rarely gave him that chance. Then came The Chosen. The role of Matthew, an outsider rejected by his own people, felt deeply personal. "I knew what it was like to be looked at as different," Paris once said. "That's why Matthew's pain felt real to me." Be it for Paris, The Chosen was the breakthrough he had been waiting for. Suddenly, fans across the world recognized him, celebrated him, and connected with his portrayal of Matthew's uniqueness. Many even wrote letters saying Matthew helped them accept their own struggles with autism or social anxiety. But with success came unexpected challenges. Typecasting didn't disappear, it just shifted. Some casting directors only saw him as the Matthew guy, unsure how to place him in other roles. The very performance that gave him recognition also risked boxing him in. Paris has spoken openly about the pressures of being a minority in an industry that still struggles with inclusion. While The Chosen gave him a platform, he still faces the reality that big Hollywood roles for South Asian actors are rare and often shallow. There's also the spiritual side. Playing a disciple of Jesus has made Paris more reflective, but it has also exposed him to scrutiny. Fans sometimes expect him to live as faithfully as the character he plays, forgetting he's human and fallible. That pressure weighs heavily. Now, in 2025, Patel continues to portray Matthew in The Chosen while branching out into other projects. He has worked on a handful of independent films and is developing a passion for storytelling behind the camera, exploring writing and production. He also uses his voice to push for better representation of minorities in film and television. In interviews, he often stresses that authenticity matters, that actors of color deserve complex, human roles, not caricatures. For Paris, Matthew will always be more than a role. It was both a mirror and a message. Being different isn't a curse, it's a calling. As he once told fans, Matthew's quirks made him the perfect disciple for Jesus. And I've learned that what makes us different is often the very thing that makes us valuable. Noah James in The Chosen. Andrew is often in Peter's shadow. He's loyal, anxious, and uncertain, always caught between faith and fear. Viewers connected with his nervous humanity, the disciple who wanted to believe but often needed reassurance. For Noah James, playing Andrew was strangely familiar because in his own career, he too often felt like the one overlooked. Before The Chosen, Noah James had done small roles in TV shows like Shameless and Games People Play, but nothing that gave him real momentum. Like many actors in Hollywood, he faced the grind of auditions, rejection, and waiting for a break that never seemed to come. When The Chosen cast him as Andrew, it was a turning point, but not without its challenges. Andrew wasn't written as the star disciple. He wasn't Peter, or Matthew, or Mary Magdalene. He was the one who doubted, hesitated, and sometimes disappeared into the background. For Noah, this was both a gift and a struggle. It gave him a role with emotional depth, but also reinforced the reality of being the second brother, the supporting figure. As The Chosen grew into a global phenomenon, Noah James gained recognition he had never experienced before. Fans greeted him at conventions, thanked him for portraying doubt so honestly, and shared how Andrew helped them see themselves in the story. Yet fame also came with a strange kind of invisibility. While Jonathan Roumie and Shahar Isaac drew headlines, Noah's name was less known, interviews were fewer, opportunities outside The Chosen were limited, and he admitted at times to feeling overshadowed. It mirrored Andrew's arc perfectly, faithful, present, but rarely the center of attention. Now, in 2025, Noah James continues with The Chosen, but also invests his energy into creative outlets beyond acting. He's passionate about music and writing, exploring stories that might never reach Hollywood, but matter deeply to him. Friends describe him as reflective, grounded, and uninterested in chasing stardom. Instead, he focuses on creating art that feels authentic, even if it doesn't make headlines. Noah once said in an interview, "I think doubt is part of faith. Andrew's hesitation is honest, and honesty is powerful." That honesty extends to his own journey as an actor, not a star chasing fame, but a storyteller navigating uncertainty. For many fans, that's exactly why his portrayal resonates. Because Noah James, like Andrew, shows us that discipleship isn't always bold and loud. Sometimes it's quiet, hesitant, and overlooked, but it's still real. Lara Silva. When viewers watch The Chosen, Eden often feels like the heartbeat of Simon Peter's story. She's strong, loyal, and quietly sacrificial. The woman who holds the family together while her husband chases a calling greater than himself. Without Eden, Peter would fall apart. But for Lara Silva, playing Eden came with its own invisible weight, portraying a woman the Bible barely mentions, yet making her unforgettable on screen. Before The Chosen, Lara Silva had only small roles in shows like Queen of the South and Dynasty. Hollywood, like so many others, often typecast Latina actresses into narrow roles, maids, side characters, or romantic stereotypes. Landing Eden was a breakthrough, but it also meant stepping into a character with little scriptural detail. She had to bring her to life almost from scratch. And while fans embraced her performance, Lara faced the challenge of recognition. Would she always be known only as Peter's wife? For many, she still feels overshadowed by the more central characters. Even within the Chosen fandom, Eden's role sometimes gets overlooked, mirroring the way women's contributions are often forgotten in biblical narratives. Off-screen, Lara has been outspoken about representation in media. She has said she wants Eden to stand for countless women who sacrifice behind the scenes, the unseen pillars of faith and family. But carrying that banner hasn't been easy. Some fans have criticized The Chosen for expanding Eden's role beyond what scripture records. And Lara often finds herself defending the value of telling women's stories in biblical dramas. The criticism can be draining. As of 2025, Lara Silva continues to play Eden in The Chosen. And she has become more than just an actress. She's a voice for women who feel invisible. She uses her platform to encourage women of faith, particularly Latinas, to embrace their worth and their impact, even when the world doesn't recognize them. She has also begun developing her own projects, seeking roles that highlight compassion and resilience rather than stereotypes. While her Hollywood career outside The Chosen is still modest, her influence among fans is profound. What makes Lara's journey powerful is how closely it parallels Eden's. Just as Eden supported Peter quietly, Lara represents the many women who support great callings but rarely receive the spotlight. In her own words, Eden is the women history forgot, but God never did. For Lara Silva, the role has been more than acting. It's become a mission to remind the world that behind every disciple, every leader, and every story of faith, there are women whose strength makes it possible. Jordan Walker, Ross. When viewers first noticed little James limping on screen, many assumed it was a creative decision by the writers. Later, it became clear the limp wasn't fiction. It was real. Actor Jordan Walker Ross has lived his entire life with cerebral palsy and scoliosis, conditions that have made him feel different, excluded, and sometimes unwanted in the acting world. For years, Hollywood treated his disability as a liability. Casting directors told him he wasn't leading man material. Roles were scarce, and the rejection nearly drove him to abandon acting altogether. Then came The Chosen, when Dallas Jenkins, the show's creator, decided to write Jordan's real disability into the story of little James. It became one of the most profound arcs of the series. In one unforgettable moment, James asks why Jesus hasn't healed him, even as he is sent out to heal others. It was a question Jordan himself had carried for decades. The scene was raw, authentic, and deeply vulnerable. Millions of fans said it gave them comfort in their own suffering. And for Jordan, it was healing to finally see his pain honored on screen instead of hidden. But with recognition came a heavy burden. Jordan has shared openly about the emotional cost of representing disability so personally. Fans often approach him in tears, thanking him for showing that imperfection doesn't disqualify anyone from being chosen by God. It's beautiful, but also overwhelming. At the same time, the industry outside The Chosen remains slow to change. While Jordan is now better known, mainstream Hollywood still rarely offers roles for disabled actors. That tension, being celebrated by fans but overlooked by casting agents, remains one of his biggest struggles. In 2025, Jordan continues with The Chosen, while also building a powerful voice as a podcaster, writer, and advocate for disability inclusion in entertainment. His podcast, What's Your Limp?, explores the hidden struggles everyone carries, physical or not. He has also become a speaker, sharing his story at schools, churches, and conferences. For him, the limp that once made him feel disqualified has now become the very thing that gives his testimony strength. Jordan once said, "If God never takes away my limp, then maybe it's because it gives me the ability to reach people I never could have reached otherwise." In that sense, his story has become more than acting. It's a living parable that weakness can be power, and that scars can tell the most important stories. For millions of fans, Jordan Walker. Ross will always be little James, but perhaps his greatest legacy is showing that even when healing doesn't come, purpose still does. Giovani Cairo in The Chosen. Thaddeus isn't the loudest or the most dramatic disciple. He doesn't argue like Peter or question like Thomas. Instead, he is gentle, kind, and steady, a presence of calm in the chaos. Many fans say he feels like the heart of the group. For Giovani Cairo, portraying Thaddeus has been a gift, but it has also highlighted the challenge of being part of a beloved ensemble while remaining one of the unseen figures in the public eye. Before The Chosen, Giovani was a little-known actor with modest credits. Hollywood, with its obsession for big names and loud personalities, rarely has room for those who prefer subtlety. Giovani, like his character, is naturally reserved. That made him perfect for Thaddeus. But it also meant he hasn't received the same recognition as his co-stars. While Jonathan Roumie, Elizabeth Tabish, and Shahar Isaac dominate interviews and headlines, Giovani often slips under the radar. Fans notice it, too. At conventions, some line up to meet Jesus or Mary Magdalene, while Giovani quietly greets a smaller crowd. It's not bitterness, it's reality. And for him, it's both humbling and challenging. Being part of The Chosen gave Giovani sudden global visibility, but it also put him in the difficult position of trying to build a career beyond it. Casting directors often see him only as the disciple, unsure of how to place him in other stories. In interviews, Giovani has admitted that the series opened doors, but not as many as people think. Fame in a faith-based production doesn't always translate into mainstream Hollywood roles. As of 2025, Giovani continues with The Chosen, but also invests in smaller independent projects. He is passionate about theater and grassroots storytelling, focusing less on fame and more on meaningful art. Fans who follow his work describe him as deeply humble, someone who values integrity over attention. Outside acting, Giovani keeps a fairly low profile, avoiding the kind of celebrity lifestyle that often consumes others. He remains grateful for his role, even if it hasn't turned him into a household name. Giovani once described Thaddeus as the disciple who loves quietly. That description could just as easily apply to himself. While he may never carry the spotlight like Peter or Matthew, his steady presence makes him indispensable to the ensemble and beloved by fans who resonate with gentleness over noise. For Giovani Cairo, the role has been less about career transformation and more about personal meaning. He embodies what The Chosen itself is about: ordinary people, quietly chosen for extraordinary stories. Now, in 2025, the actors of The Chosen live with the blessings and the burdens of telling the greatest story ever told. Some thrive, some struggle, but none are unchanged. They walk into airports, churches, and theaters with the weight of sacred characters on their shoulders. For them, the line between art and life has blurred in ways they never expected. What they gained was influence, recognition, and purpose. What they lost was anonymity, freedom, and at times, peace. Like the disciples they portray, they learned that being chosen comes with a cost. For us, The Chosen is a series we watch, discuss, and recommend. For them, it became a life-altering journey, one that continues long after the cameras stop rolling. Their struggles remind us that faith is not about perfection but perseverance, not about certainty but about carrying doubts with courage. And maybe that's why their stories move us so deeply. Because in Jonathan's exhaustion, Shahar's silence, Elizabeth's redemption, Paris's vulnerability, and Jordan's limp, we see something of ourselves. The actors of The Chosen gave us more than performances. They gave us their wounds, their doubts, and their humanity. And through that, they reminded us of the very heart of the gospel, that God chooses the broken, not the perfect. So now the question is this: which of their stories speaks most to you? Is it the actor who carried a role too heavy for one man, the one who chose privacy over fame, or the one who turned weakness into a testimony? Let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this journey gave you something to reflect on, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves The Chosen, and subscribe for more stories that go beyond the screen. Because some series fade when the credits roll, but The Chosen, for its actors, the story is only just beginning.